Hi everyone, I'm Renee. This is my 1-year anniversary video. Following Booktube tradition, there is a video that Booktubers do when they reach the 1-year mark, answering some questions and answering viewer questions. So I do have some questions from you lovely people out there, and I'm going to answer a couple questions first that are some I taken from, I don't know, some other 1-year videos formatting that I've seen, but loosely. I'm going to answer some of the questions that I like to hear the answers to as a new booktuber, especially when I was brand new. So the first one and the most common question is, why did you start a channel? The reason that I started a channel was that back in the summer of 2022, I discovered that there's this thing called Bookstagram. I was listening to a couple book podcasts, mainly the Book Club Review podcast and the Bookcast Club. And both of those wonderful podcasters would talk a lot about Bookstagram. And I didn't know what that was, and I certainly did not know it was part of Instagram, but somehow I figured it out. And then, mainly through the Bookcast Club podcast, I discovered this thing called Booktube, which again, I did not know was part of YouTube because I'm not a YouTube watcher. But on that wonderful podcast, Sarah, one of the hosts, was interviewing some Booktube people. And she interviewed Chris from Chris's Cauldron of Books and Sean from Sean the Book Maniac. I realized that oh yeah, okay, I guess there's this thing called Booktube, and I Googled it and I found myself in YouTube and I found Chris's channel and I found Sean's channel. Those are the first channels that I watched. But I thought, it just gave me the inspiration to talk about books. The big thing for me was, at the time, I started a Bookstagram account. And I just quickly felt, so all of that stuff was going on, but I quickly felt like I don't want to type out my thoughts about books. I just wasn't doing well. I didn't want to type out long descriptions and whatever. And I'd seen these Booktube channels, and I saw how Lindy started the new channel, and I thought, I think I'm going to do it that way. I think I'm going to try something new. I'm going to put myself out there. It's going to help me talk more critically about books. It's going to help me figure that language out. It's going to force me to talk about my reading experience more than just saying I loved this book or I didn't like it. Yeah, I just wanted to be a newbie at something. I wanted to really put myself out there, and it's a nice, safe platform to do that, because no problem if you ever get anyone to watch, or if you get a few people to watch, let alone subscribe. It's free. It's a no-cost, fun way to help yourself understand your own reading experience. And that's been an absolute joy. And I'm just starting. I feel like obviously I don't have literary criticism skills, and but I'm learning the language. I'm learning to pay more attention to why I feel a certain way about something and another way about something else. Because I engage more on Booktube than I did, which was zero engagement, I have met so many wonderful people. I am just thrilled to get any kind of comment, starting a conversation. Let's talk about someone's experience of a book that's different than mine, and the recommendations that viewers have given me are off the charts wonderful. So the other part of the booktube experience has been the engagement. You know, I don't belong to any in-person book clubs right now, to any book clubs. And the engagement with the community, not just in my own channel, but with all of the wonderful people that I subscribe to. It's so enriched my life. The diversity of the people that I'm connected with is also off the charts. And it's also just enriched my life knowing all of you and knowing more about the person that you are and the very diverse background, experience, reading taste, on and on and on that all of you have. It's just been so enriching. And I'm only getting started. Like, I just feel I am very early days and just trying to figure it out. So one of the other areas that I wanted to touch on in this particular clip that I will put a timestamp on just in case you want to skip it, is how did I figure out all the technology? So first I'll talk about about editing. I didn't edit my early videos. I didn't know how. I tried through a couple editing software, free software, one of them being iMovie, which I never figured out. And then I tried a couple trial subscriptions to a couple other editing platforms. I did land on one. I don't know that I'm going to keep that one when the subscription ends, because, and also I think whatever editing platform you land on and you connect with is the one for you. So when I would look at videos about editing software, or I would Google what's the best editing software for booktubers, I would try out those platforms. And ultimately, if you do some free trials, or if you choose a free software, it's going to be the one that you can actually understand. That's really the short of it, the long and short of it, is it's going to be the one that you can actually utilize. You can cut when you want to delete an if that's what you're doing. You can insert a thumbnail of a book, which took me absolutely months to figure out how that was being done. Also, once I learned to edit with an editing software, I felt like I could edit every little pause, every little too many ands. And I think I went overboard and did that because you can just get obsessed with it because now you know how to do it. But now I've gone back the other way, and I've just, if I see a too long pause and the video is going to be long anyway, or just feel like deleting an then I delete an but I don't get crazy about it, because the more natural a video is that I view, the more I like it. So I try not to over edit now. And also, it takes less time. So that's the software part of it. I film on my phone. I've always filmed on my phone. I suppose I would be using a camera if I had one. I don't have one, but that would be fun. I'd like to maybe try that someday and pick up a used camera. Using my iPhone, which I think is an iPhone 12, just a regular size phone, works fine for me. Microphone. I use this microphone. I'll try to find my order from Amazon so I can link this specific item below. I decided to use a microphone because I film in different rooms, and some of these rooms are echoey, and I also film in my car when I'm at the library, and I felt like I just liked having a consistency of audio output, audio level, so that when you're watching the video you don't have to fool with the audio. This clips into my phone. I don't really like having a wire, but that's the way it is. That's what I have right now. And it was like $20 at most. Maybe it was less than that. Lighting. So this lighting's weird. I am staring at a window that has a lot of light coming down on it, but I do move around the house following the light, which is fantastic. I think once you become a booktuber and you are using natural light, then you find places in your house to film that you never thought you would film. Oh, I have a tripod, a very cheap tripod that we bought years ago when we wanted to take our own pictures for LinkedIn. So it's probably $20 or less, and the simplest tripod that's designed to hold a phone. So that's what I use. And it's worth it to have a tripod because then you can just move it around with you anywhere and it's pretty inexpensive. But you can certainly prop your phone up anywhere or your camera and not have a tripod at all. So those are the technology parts. As far as the types of videos that I make and how I figured that out, I really haven't figured that out. I think that for me, settling into the kind of videos that I like to make just happened naturally. And I would recommend that to anyone starting a channel, is to make the videos that you find that you like making. I don't think I've ever done a monthly wrap up. I get a lot of library books, so I like to talk about them while I still have them. I find that for me, I can talk about books better if I'm just fresh out of reading them within that week or so, 2 weeks, and that just works for me to have the ability to share my thoughts. So I guess I just found that I wasn't doing those. I love to watch them. I love to watch many kinds of videos that I don't myself make, but I think whatever rhythm that you find yourself in, whatever kind of video you feel called to make, are the videos that you should make. There are no formulas. I think that you'll have the most fun with BookTube if you're making the videos that you want to make. So those are all the BookTube technical things and why I started BookTube types of questions that I wanted to answer. And I will be back to answer questions that I've gotten from all of you lovely people. Hi, I'm back. I lost the light that was in that room, so here I am. Plus, I just finished up working, so I wanted to continue answering questions on the 1 year anniversary tag. And some of them are from you. So I want to get to those. So thank you for sending me any questions. I really appreciate it. How generous of any of you to take time to do that. One of them was, the question was I an avid reader growing up? I was an avid reader. My mom was a reader and still is, but certainly was back then. I have a sister who's 10 months older than me, and there was a system that we got. This was back in the 60s. I was born in 64. So mid-60s, we got a set of encyclopedias, and with that set came this system that were a bunch of pages. That was a system meant to teach a child how to read, because it was like school, but it was in this device that you scrolled with a plastic scroll thing, and it would ask questions and answer. And I don't exactly remember how it was done, but somehow that system taught me to read. And I was reading before I got to kindergarten, because back then there wasn't a preschool or pre-K. So then I just have early memories of going to the library and being able to read simple books and then progressively reading more. I adored the school library. I adored the Scholastic book order day. I was circling everything that there was to get. We would order some books sometimes. And so I do have memories of some of those key early books. Yeah, so I think it was fed by my mom being a reader and just going from there. And then I did the same thing with my own 2 kids when they were little. I was always in the library with them, and just it just kind of spilled over. Yeah, if I wrote a book? If I wrote a book, what a great question. What kind of book would it be? Where would it be? What's the genre, the tropes, things like that? What a great question. When I started thinking about this, in my mind, I created such a huge and expansive story, and what it was doing was just taking all of these favorite things about books that, I don't know, in my mind I felt like I'd enjoy writing a story about, even though I have no desire to write a book at all. I'm just assuming like it would be a fiction book and it would have elements of like some of the adventure stories that I read, whether it was Pippi Longstocking or Encyclopedia Brown or Milo from the Phantom Toll Booth, somebody who was a little daring, wanted to get outside of their little world, which in some cases just meant their room, and somehow finds themselves in a vaster world. In the case of Milo, it was, what was it, the land of Dictionopolis or something, and in Pippi Longstocking, it's just outside her door. Somehow there's a anthropomorphized animal character. I was thinking about the TikTok, sorry, the watchdog and, the characters from Charlotte's Web that I fell in love with, Stuart Little, all of that stuff. The rabbits from Watership Down. Somehow we're all in an adventure. Maybe there's a little bit of tension because my main characters unwittingly come across something that they can help out with or solve. I don't know. It's a mishmash. And then there's a part of me that somehow wants to involve books. Oh boy, it's just way too many. So that was a fun thing to think about. What are some of my favorite nonfiction books? I'm just about to talk more about nonfiction. This is such a good question because I've seen this thing on Booktube that's like Nonfiction November that I wasn't aware of. Maybe I wasn't paying attention when I started this channel a year ago, but I read a lot of nonfiction in 2021, and that's ordinarily the case. I read a pretty steady amount of nonfiction. I haven't read any nonfiction this year, except I'm reading a little book now, so there's one. But like I've read a couple memoirs, but other than that, I haven't been drawn to much nonfiction this year, which I'm going to remedy. And in that nonfiction video I'll talk a little bit more about why I think I wasn't reading as much nonfiction. But so my favorite nonfiction will change over time, of course, as the books we read just keep going and going. So in recent memory, the two books that have stuck with me the longest, and certainly this first one the most out of even the last 5 years, I would say. It's called Invisible Child, and it's written by Andrea Elliott. It was a new release when I got it out in the fall of 2021. And Andrea Elliott is a journalist, and it's a journalistic nonfiction book that follows a girl named Dasani, that's how I'm pronouncing it, and her family who live in poverty, and actually at the time of the book starts are living in a shelter in Brooklyn, New York. She follows Dasani and her siblings and her mom and dad for 8 years. They set up a certain set of rules, set of guidelines of how this consensual family relationship will go between the family and Andrea. And in other words, she's not a savior, she's not going to intervene, but that would be hard sometimes not to intervene. And so that's spelled out in the beginning. I don't recall whether her plan was to follow Dasani and her family for 8 years, but that's how it turned out. And so it's a long book, and you are just swept away by Dasani and her family and their trials and tribulations. You are rooting for Dasani every time you open the book. There are highs and lows. There's a point where Dasani goes to a boarding school, and it happens to be a boarding school that I'm familiar with because I lived in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area for a long time. So I won't go into the details, but I am familiar with the school and their mission. And this becomes a very complicated thing because it's very special to get into this boarding school. And this boarding school has a history of helping orphans in the beginning of their history, and then underprivileged kids. And while the family is happy, they're also extremely trepidatious, and that's an amazing and heartbreaking part of the story. Yeah, I mean, I could do a full review. I won't. Check out that book. I highly recommend. And then the other one that's really stuck with me is called Valley of the Birdtail. I have it in front of me because I want to tell you who the authors are. Two authors, Andrew Stobo Snyderman and Douglas Sanderson. And I think they're both attorneys. So Snyderman is a writer and lawyer, and Douglas Sanderson is also a lawyer, and Douglas is Swampy Cree Beaver Clan of the Opa-Squayak Cree Nation. I'm sure I did not pronounce that right, so forgive me. Valley of the Birdtail is about the 150-year history between Rossburn, a town that's on one side of a river, and the Wayway Si Capo Indian Reserve. And the fact that it is a reserve, and how did that come about? The way that the community and the town has tried, and the government has tried to help the Wayway Si Capo nation of people, and how they have absolutely hindered that community. And what's happening today? What's happening in present day? I'm completely collapsing the entire story. It really opened my eyes to this history. This happens to be Canadian, but I highly recommend. They were very fair about bringing in hope with the history. So those are my two nonfiction recommendations. Thanks for the question. What books got you into reading? Because I was an early reader and we went to the library a lot and we had those scholastic book orders. I was, this is in the 60s, in the mid to late 60s, I was reading books like the Phantom Toll Booth, and eventually books like Stuart Little and Charlotte's Web, all of the like Caldecott and Newbery winners. So those types of books that I could get out of the library and occasionally buy. And then I went on to read Encyclopedia Brown series and then Agatha Christie. So those are like my real early and formidable reading experiences. I also remember reading A Wrinkle in Time, The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basile, Frank Weiler, the types of books that were popular in the 60s and 70s, in the late 60s and 70s. So that just fed my appetite. Anytime I could see a young person on an adventure, or in this case, Stuart Little, anthropomorphized animal, on some kind of adventure and overcoming and trying to overcome and triumph challenges, that was like the book for me. And apparently I liked the mysteries, and especially Encyclopedia Brown. What books have changed the way you see or move through the world? The books as an adult that really started to open up my appetite to more challenging books happened when this is like late 80s, I was in Pittsburgh. We were living in the city. I had access to a different library than I had been going to before we moved, so a much larger library system. I must have picked up whatever Iris Murdoch book was available. So she was still alive then. This would have been like late 80s, like really late 80s. And I have a distinct memory of reading one of her books and knowing that it was different than anything I'd ever read, that it had more serious writing, a different kind of writing, and that this was the kind of writing that I enjoyed. And I read a few more Iris Murdoch. I've never been able to identify which ones I read. And then at the same time, I was friends with another claims adjuster. I was a claims adjuster in those days. And this claims adjuster had gone to college. I had not gone to college yet. I didn't go to college until I was an adult. While I was working, I went to college full-time in a program where you could do that. But that wasn't until a little later. So Wendy, she knew I was a reader, and she just opened the world to me by telling me about dead authors. I had not been reading dead authors. I've been reading popular authors and then the Iris Murdoch. And she opened me up to Henry James and W. Somerset Maugham and James Baldwin and I can't remember who else. But again, blew my mind. Like, okay, this is different. This is different than the other, more popular books that I had been reading. And I realized that there was like a whole world of authors. I also read at that time Ayn Rand. So I read the maybe Atlas Shrugged first and then The Fountainhead. And again, life-changing to me. I was so interested in the way that she brought, that Ayn Rand brought her philosophy to these books, that I then read a biography of her life and just went down rabbit holes. I did that with Iris Murdoch also. Read anything I could about her life and how she was writing these books and what was influencing her. So that was very influential time in my life. My star sign, Scorpio. My birthday is October 28th, and I think I really am a Scorpio in all the descriptions that I've read. It just fits me to a T. Cocktail / drink of choice. I barely drink anymore. Maybe twice a year I'll have half a glass of wine or something, but or a beer. So if we go rock climbing and it's hot out and we're in a specific place, I'm thinking of the Shawangunk Mountains that sits right outside of New Paltz, New York. You can go into New Paltz after you're done. You can go to this particular bar that I can't remember the name of, bar restaurant. And that is when I will probably share a beer with my husband Blaze. One of my favorite beers to share after climbing is an Ommegang Hennepin, which is a farmhouse ale. I think it's like a something saison. That just, I will just drink it way too fast. And then the other beer that I discovered a long time ago when I was in Harrisburg is a Belgian beer. It's the first time I ever had a Belgian beer, and it is called Le Fin du Mont. And I don't know if that is the name or the brewery, but if you know Belgian beers, you know that one. And again, if I had some in a glass, I would drink it too fast because it's so yummy. As far as wine, I love a very lightly sparkling, extremely light, crisp, cold rosé in the summer. Starbucks order, man, I wish I was interesting, but I'm not. I just get regular black coffee when I go to Starbucks. But in the summer, I do like to get iced coffee or nitro coffee, but I usually drink it without any sweetener. Every once in a while, I'll add some sweetener to it, which like the raw sugar or whatever. And I mean, in a blue moon, especially if I'm somewhere special, like if I'm in New York City, I'm probably going to order a cappuccino in a coffee shop that I won't be in frequently, just because like that seems special to me and it's going to be super good. And so I have fond memories of some coffee shops that I've been in New York City. It gets more interesting if I'm in a special place. Most memorable reading experience. This is such a great question. I don't have a specific, like, you know, when we went to, you know, Paris or something like that. But I can say two ways I want to answer this question. My most memorable reading experiences I have found when I'm thinking about this is as a kid. So whether I was reading in my room, just holed up in my room on my beanbag chair, just getting lost in a book and not even realizing what time it is. I mean, we've probably all done that as a kid in some form, and it's delicious. Absolutely delicious. So I have lots of memories like that. And so then it just takes the form of wherever else I was lost in a book. So maybe it was, we had this boat and sometimes I'd be on the back of the boat just getting lost in a book because I brought my book with me. Just a specific memory of reading Peter Pan on the back of a boat. And in our tree, by the time we moved to Pittsburgh, there was a beautiful old willow tree, and it had a spot that you could sit in it on a big branch, and I would sit in there and read. And at the time when I was a kid and an early teenager, I could read in cars. So I could bring my big, chunky Richard Adams Watership Down paperback with me in the car, and my friend and I would be reading our books. So I have memories like that. That's it, everyone. Thanks for putting up with me in this video. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for growing with me and helping me become a better engager. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I hope I see you on the next one.